Doors closed, you're locked in. We're gonna get going. I have the honor of hosting you today. My name is Fiona. I'm gonna stand a little bit awkwardly behind you because we've got a live stream coming through here so people can see me. If I walk over there, then you're the only ones that can see me. Welcome to APIForce. We are running one of our community events today. It's hosted by MuleSoft. We've got a couple of my colleagues here, and we're really, really excited to have all of you here with us today. I don't have to press for the next slide.
When your integration is not working, you get angry. When you get angry, you play hard. When you play hard, you hurt yourself. When you hurt yourself, you get an eye patch. When you get an eye patch, people think you are a gangster. When people think you are a gangsta, you get in trouble. When you get in trouble, you wake up in a roadside ditch. Don't wake up in a roadside ditch. Join APIForce on 18th of March in Zurich.
All right, technical challenges, but I hope you got the message. We are your hosts, so the four of us standing up here, and you also see our pictures on the slide. We also hosted the last event virtually, so we are actually very happy that we can do this in person today and see so many faces that we haven't seen in a long time, and new faces as well. We also have some really cool guests today. If you go, am I clicking? Yeah, thank you. So we have some guest speakers, a really packed agenda. I'll ask all of the speakers to introduce themselves when they start their session. But you see up here we have some friends from LocalStack and then also from Valion and Interdiscount. What are they doing today with MuleSoft? Look out for those as we go through the agenda, which is this. We are currently in the welcome and introduction, so we can soon tick that off as a successful to-do. And then we're going to go through the session with Andre and Marcus on what they're doing to successfully implement their API strategy. I'm just too excited for my section later. Then we'll have a break. So coffee machines, I think we have some in the back. We have some outside during the sessions. If you need a coffee, it's a bit noisy in the back, so preferably to run outside. We also have the bathrooms by the stairs, so if you want to use that, we're not going to keep you hostage literally, but you can go out when you need to. And after the first break, we're going to go into how you can develop your cloud apps offline. That's with LocalStack. So that should be a very, very interesting topic for us to go through. And then for anyone who doesn't know MuleSoft Composer, this should be super exciting. I think, Amir, you're doing this one with Andreas. So they've prepared an overview and a demo of what MuleSoft Composer can actually do beyond what the Anypoint platform does. Another break where you get more coffee. Hopefully you're all buzzed for then my session, which is integration and sustainability. I'll introduce more on that when we get there. But start thinking about what you think integration and sustainability have to do with each other. And then we're going to wrap up. There will be, we're not just going to run off and leave, but we can have some drinks, get to know each other, spend some time meeting people who we haven't met before, and hopefully just have a nice little Friday evening. So, let's get started. I'm looking at you.
Auch von meiner Seite ein herzliches Willkommen zum Event. Es freut mich, dass wir heute vorstellen dürfen, was wir bei Interdiscount Microspot mit MuleSoft umgesetzt haben. Ich selber, mein Name ist Andre Balli, ich arbeite für die Valion. Wir sind seit 4,5 Jahren MuleSoft-Partner und haben diverse Installationen umgesetzt in der Schweiz. Markus Vici wird sich dann noch selber vorstellen. Was werden wir machen? Wir werden die Ausgangslage anschauen, die wir angetroffen haben.
Sorry, is it possible to do it in English?
I can try.
Okay. Well, how many English-speaking people we have here? We have a few. If it's possible in English, otherwise we can. Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Oh, you will do it in English. Okay. Yeah.
We will start with the starting point, then we will have a look at the vision of Interdiscount, and in the end I show you a smart outlook what we did with the master article datas, and then Markus will give you an overview about the journey we had the last two years and how Interdiscount is now using MuleSoft. A few words about Interdiscount Microspot. There are two brands, one company, and they are with Interdiscount the largest omnichannel retailer in Switzerland. So they have 180 store points, and then with Microsoft, one of the leading online retail shops with around 750,000 products. Yeah, that you understand what we did, I give you a short overview about the main data flows, and then that's the basic for all the stories are behind. So they work together with at the moment more than 55 partners, distributors, and they all send us article master datas where we have in the article description, the stock, the prices, and everything we need. Then we take that to the ERP system. At the moment it is in R3, and we are in the migration to S4. And on the PIM we enrich the data with pictures, descriptions, whatever, and in the end the articles are on the online shop. As soon as a customer do an order, the order is placed in the ERP. On the ERP we have a decision: do we send it from our local warehouse, or do we use one of our partners to deliver the items? And if you use the partner, then of course we have all the different messages for order response, delivery note, invoice, and so on. And in the end, the item is delivered from the distributor, so there is no logistic in use from Interdiscount. Yeah, that was the integration jungle before the project. There we have the partners, then we have some SaaS tools, we have the integration layer for all the external partners, the ERP, the integration to the shop, so the internal integration, and in the end the shop. So 2007 they started with a Linux server and some bash scripts. Then 2012 they developed something in Java by their own for the master article datas. Then few years later they implemented something also in Java for the whole order management. Then there was not enough knowledge for Linux, so they took a Windows server and did the same as with in 2007, but not with bash scripts. They did it with PowerShell. And then they used Seeburger for a part of the integration, but not for everything. And in the end, they also used the SaaS platform to integrate the partners. And so you see there is a big jungle of tools and technologies, and it was really difficult to manage that during the operation. So then, after we had the analysis of the situation they are in, we worked on an API strategy with Interdiscount Microspot. And I would like to show you two main reasons why you need an API strategy. If we go to the timeline, there are all the time new technologies, and now we have new technologies all the time, bigger uncertainty on the new technologies. will they be there in a few years or not? And we have the existing technologies. And each technology gives you the possibility to make the customer journey better. And so the gap you see there, it's the possibility of the technology to make the customer journey better, and then you have a small gap because the technology, we always have to learn how we can use it and how we can bring it to the customer. And these small gaps is the challenge. So that means the gap with the new technologies rise in the end two main gaps. One, there is the strategic gap we have. So you need the possibility to adapt your business model always to the new stuff that you can enable or transform your business model during the whole time. And then you have the second gap. We call that the operational gap. There you need the ability in your organization that you can change your processes, your IT systems, and that all the employees have the competencies and the skills to do a permanently transformation. And to close both gaps, API are very important for each organization. So after we had the API strategy and we want the management to do the integration, we started with to know which requirements we have to fulfill, and started a product evaluation. And in the end, MuleSoft won, otherwise I would not be here. And then we started in the summer 2020, we started a pilot. One was integration of the B2B customers between ERP and Salesforce Sales Cloud. And the other was to integrate a price scrolling engine. The one was end of life, and we integrated the new one without a change to the existing core systems. Then we were successful at the POC, so we created all the organizational parts, so architecture guidelines, developer guidelines, the roadmap. We trained the people, and then we started to grow the platform. And we started then around October, November, and after Marcus will show his slides, then you will see how many APIs we developed over the last 2 years. And one of the biggest challenges was the article master data. You remember the picture before with all the different tools. And now I show you how we did it with the article master data. Before why they choose MuleSoft, we have a lot of classic integration with EDI, Edifact, all the old formats with AS2 and everything. And they also need especially for the shop part, all the microservices we need to integrate. The other one was the possibility of a hybrid environment. So they have a multi-cloud environment, and also they have some parts which are running on Coop site, and we have some stuff which runs on-prem in Jegensdorf. Then one of the key was the API-led part, because it's really a part of MuleSoft, and it gives you a good structure, and if everyone follows the structure, you will really win a lot of, or can take out a lot of them. You will see it if we talk about the reuse of APIs. And yeah, the last point was it is an attractive and modern design of the Anypoint Studio, and that should help to win also new employees to work with MuleSoft. Yeah, that's the approach we had with the article master data. So there we have all our partners with different formats and protocols. There we have the experience APIs for them, and sometimes we can reuse also the experience API. If not, then we have to write a special one for those partners. Then we have on the process level, we have one for the article master data. There we do a duplicate of all the messages. So once is the way to the R3 to the old system, and the other stream goes to the S4 system. And so there they have the possibility to compare the data. It was much more easier to test and to compare the data. And we won some time because we didn't have to create a test data. They took the live data for their tests. Then we have one to process API where we go to an external system called OneDot. OneDot does the harmonization of all the articles, because we have different distributors which send the same article, and on OneDot we combine them, that we have the same brand name, that we have the same article description, and so on. And as soon as the article are ready, the article comes back to the SAP HANA, and at the moment we did the cutover a few weeks ago, and since a few weeks the article master data are, or the master system is S4, and for the order management, there we are in the phase where we're transferring all the stuff from R3 to S4, and I hope we can close that in a few weeks. We promised it, and now we have to deliver it. Yeah, the platform journey. That's a slide which Fiona always tries to push up and to bring us further. And I think at the moment we are somewhere in the middle. If you have a look to the article master data, there we are really fast in onboarding new partners. In the whole order management, we are, yeah, at the moment we have to transform the old stuff, but in a few weeks we are able there also that we can integrate much more faster as before. And also in the, I think in the monitoring and error handling of the whole process, we did a big step, because if there is a wrong data type or we miss some data, we automatically write the message back to the distributor, and now we don't have there to do something manually, and that's a big win, that we can reduce the operation part and we have more capacity for new stuff. And now the new stuff is shown by Marcus.
Thank you very much. In 2013, I was thinking about to do something new in my spare time. I didn't know what could it be, but I freshly moved to Murten, that's in the western part of Switzerland. And when we went shopping, we passed a stable, and I was thinking about to think about if it could be a good idea if I can learn how to ride a horse. And actually this was... Okay, this was not trained at the dry run. So I tried to do this. So actually this turned out very well, and I really have a lot of joy now being every week with one of these animals. But then a few years later, in 2018, there was a mule joining our farm. And up to then I did not even know if you can ride them, but obviously you see it's possible. So life is full of changes, and so also platforms are full of changes. What is also important is when you go on a journey, you have to have a reliable companion. So with this mule, it's awesome to see how steep they can go if they really want. So it's sometimes it's really scary, but it's a lot of fun too. So you need a reliable and a companion who can really cope up with the workload also. And this brings me now to the next change in 2020. Well, this change was not my wish. I had to leave my former company. They did not need me anymore, so this was another change in my life. And also for them, getting older, you know about changes. So if you are in a situation like this, never let go and just look forward. And actually you will see now how it turned out for me, and I think it turned out very well for me. So I didn't know anything about MuleSoft, I did know about IT, I didn't know about how to run a system, but I never heard about MuleSoft. When I joined in October 2021, this was about the status. You see here, a little bit blurry, so, but you see here all the APIs in the Anypoint Visualizer, and actually the Anypoint Visualizer is for me one of the coolest functions you get out of the Anypoint platform. Also, someone not very familiar with IT is now able to see how many interfaces or how many APIs we programmed, and can furthermore even check our work. Did they really deliver? So you see here the snapshot of January 2021. In October, you see it growed. And guess what? In March, it growed even more. I was even afraid that I can bring it in here, but you see what we did achieve in this short period of time. And therefore, again, you need a reliable companion. And also, if you see here, the darker it's get, the more workload is on it. So it's a really mule, a soft mule. Let's zoom a little bit in. And again, this does not need a lot of IT skills to go there. It's some clicks. This one is one of my work I did earlier, about 1 year ago. So I was pretty new to the platform. This was an API gateway implemented. And actually it's the API gateway checking. Whenever you are in an inter-discount filiale shop or online, whenever you put something into the basket, it runs over this API gateway and asking the data from how many pieces are available from stock over this API gateway. You also see how our customers use this. So you see it starts in the morning 8:30, and it goes over lunchtime. You have the first peak, and then when people are going home, they start to shop again. So also this, with a few fingertips or clicks with the mouse, you are there. You don't need a lot of skills for that. And what I see from a product owner view, the most like to see is 0.0% error rate. So with only implementing an API gateway, you control also an API not implemented on MuleSoft. You don't need to access another system. You have all the data there. This brings me to the first point of the 3-point strategy. Never say no. I said if you have to cope with such a lot of requests for new APIs, you have to be able to deliver. So when James Bond gets a mission, did you see he saying no sometimes when he gets a mission? No. So we can't. So when we have the demand for a new systems integration, if they know MuleSoft in Interdiscount, the decision is done, they like to use it, okay, fine. But then we have also the architecture board. If we have a new solution and we don't know where to go, so we go to this board and ask how should we implement it. And then it's of course good if we never have to say no. But there is another point which I would also like to outline. In the former company I was at the other side of the counter. It was me requesting new integrations. And I get a lot of no's, or I knew when I asked them I have to implement like this. So for me it is important, also as a product owner for integration, there must be no obligation. The reason for this is if someone knows I am forced to use MuleSoft, maybe he does not even go to the board anymore, and what happens? He tries to implement it in a way he likes to, and then you forget about it and you do a migration later, and then it pops up. Oh, here we implemented something like this, could you please migrate this? Who did already hear this? Yeah. So there must be no obligation to. But of course, if you can deliver, if they know you deliver, they don't hesitate anymore to say, okay, let's implement something on the platform. This leads me now to the next point, the know-how transfer. Today, all the developments are done in a team called PINT, Project Integration, and there are a lot of small James Bonds in there. But the goal is now that, from my point of view, if you know how to handle Anypoint Studio, who did already work with Anypoint Studio? Some are here, so you know how easy it is to develop something if you know how to handle it. So the goal is that the other teams who also develop software don't have to come to our team, but we help them and show them how they can do this. This is Roger Moore, we sent to team A. By the way, I did choose Sean Connery for our team because I think it's the coolest James Bond, and I'm really working with the coolest team in this camp. And then we sent Timothy Dalton to team B, and we have team C and team D. So we trained the other agents to be able to deliver the needs they have for API themselves. But this is actually the hardest part. As you know, it's not easy, or you need to want to learn something new. So then it's good you have a good tool with it, and instead of showing it on a slide, I try to show that right away in the system. You see the Anypoint Studio here. I've prepared a little workflow here, and for today I show you how you develop or change something small. You see here very small demo for ... here. So I would like to rename that. If I make a call now with the Postman, it's very cool to use Postman to test your APIs, because then you have a single point of truth. Every other team who develops or uses APIs knows about Postman, so you can this one to see the test, and okay, I get this request back, demo 4. So let's go to the Anypoint Studio, and let's write it with one hand. Did I write it correct? So I develop it again. I save it, and it immediately should get redeployed again. Yes, it seems like. Let's make a call to it. Now it would be red because it's not yet deployed. So you see, you do the changes graphically supported. So you don't have to be a hardcore programmer. And I mentioned I did not know about MuleSoft, I did not know about programming at all. So, but now, let's see if I could do this change. And voila, you see here the APIForce. So the lower the entry barrier is for another team to learn about something new, the more open they are for changes, the more open they are for learning about it. Let's go back to the presentation. And then there is the other cool thing called the Anypoint Exchange. Who is already familiar with the Anypoint Exchange? Here we have some more hands, right? Cool. So, as I showed before, let me search for my Anypoint Studio. We go to Exchange. I hope the connection is still here. Yes. So, as I showed before in the visualizer, you have a lot of APIs. Imagine you have all the APIs developed in your company available like this, so that one can go to your Exchange in this case, log in, you can sign up for an API, and then you are, as a user of this API, able to use this API with your client ID, client secret. Imagine you have only implemented this all over your different IT departments, and you have everything in one place. So you go to, in this case, EODM. Oops, I clicked something wrong here. Let's go. This is the public portal. Actually, the public portal is available for every employee at Coop. We are 90,000 in Switzerland. So everyone with a valid Coop account can access this and could use an API. So the entry barrier to use this is very low, and here I can sign up for this instance. I choose my name and request the access, and I get right away my personal client ID, client secret. So as of then, in your API manager, let's go and search for the availability service I showed before. As of then, you are aware of what happens. From your API, you see how many access you had, and you see what system did access this API. So when it comes to migration, you know about, yes?
Just to make you aware that we don't see anything from this point.
Yes.
So if you can explain.
Yes, so what you see here is the API manager. You see a graph. I think you see a little bit of a line here.
Yes.
So you see here.
But you don't know what it is.
Yes, you see here the number of requests this API received. And here you see the name of the system who did make this request. So for this API, I know exactly who do I have to talk to if I have changes on the API. And this is very important. Do you really know who is using your API if you are not managing it a little bit? So it's very hard then to find it out. And sometimes you switch down or upgrade an API, and then you get the complaints, oh, why isn't it not working anymore? So this should not happen here. We see the request, and again, this API is really used, one of the heaviest throughout into Discount. So let's go back to the presentation. So by introducing this API layer, API gateway layer, you secure that you can manage all the different APIs. Of course, the ideal way is that you implement all the APIs directly on MuleSoft. But we are not in the green field, so we cannot say to anyone, go right away, write everything on MuleSoft. Like for the availability service, this was developed as a microservice externally, so we onboarded it like this, and now we have the control. And last but not least, we can also onboard any other API you have today available worldwide. And you know it's a lot. So we can onboard them. we have immediately the overview who is using it, and this gives us transparency. I think this is already worth of really. This has such a. This has really a great use that you have afterwards such an overview about all the APIs you use throughout your company. So let's sum up. Strategy number 1, it must be scalable, trustful, take the workload. Then it must be ready to know-how transfer by easy to use. And then one of the great features is the API gateway feature, where you can really build up your API inventory, where you can start going on with reusing all your APIs you implemented for someone else. So that's it. That's true. So I don't know if you have time for questions.
Do we have any questions? Can we use maybe this microphone?
Hello, test.
Do you have any questions?
How many APIs you got up and running right now?
About 80.
80?
80. But it's not always an API. Sometimes it's also a file transfer. You use a file. It's just an application, but also that you can implement with MuleSoft.
So I have no idea about MuleSoft until today. It's the first time I heard about it. So sorry if this is a stupid question, but since you mentioned Postman earlier, this is only strictly for synchronous REST-based APIs, right? So if you have something like an event-driven microservice architecture where your services react to events and you have these async APIs, that's not what MuleSoft or this analytics tool are thought for.
It's just one way to test the APIs. But of course you can also implement asynchronous or, oops, what happened? Or asynchronous, or I didn't know.
Are those APIs all REST-based or?
Not all. As I just explained, we also do we also implemented file transfers only, where you read a file from a location and you transfer it. You make a transformation, you transfer it to another location. This is another way based on scheduler, or also you can trigger it somehow different. I don't know what you mean exactly.
No, it's fine. It makes sense. Thanks.
Feel free to not answer if it's not possible, but what do you use for authentication? So IGP or?
Today we are still using this client ID, client secret header authentication.
Who generates that?
MuleSoft itself.
Okay, so it's within MuleSoft natively.
We did look into OAuth for this, but it's a question of cost, of course. And the other point is, we are right now, next week, we are doing a pen test. So we are very curious what our security partners say. And I'm really very curious to see if they say, okay, client ID, client secret, authenticated in the header is not secure enough, do something more. I'm happy for that feedback, because then I can move on with OAuth.
Thank you.
I saw the slide with teams. In team A, I guess it's C4E, or kind of how you call the team A in the slide.
It's pinned. It's the
it's
team
not, but
taking care about the.
You also C4E on the board who is running all the implementations.
Center for Enablement.
I did not understand the question.
So C4E, you don't aware what it is.
Okay, maybe.
So I work with Interdiscount as their success manager, and I think it's an interpretation of the C4E. The knowledge diffusion that he's talking about is sort of the C4E principle that MuleSoft talks about. Yeah. Sounds good.
Sounds good, yes.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you for the session. It's just a follow-up from that one actually. Okay, in terms of like democratizing or enabling your community, okay, what are the main challenges that you had into this count, and how did you overcome that?
With community, you mean the teams working with MuleSoft?
No, within your InterDiscount community, that way you're enabling your community to do their own APIs, changes, and development.
We try to do this. So this is a strategy that not all has to get to our teams, but the other teams are motivated enough to do their part of the development for MuleSoft themselves. So this is actually not done yet. This is just a path I like to go. But I think with the tools we have and the motivation, and I have also to say that we have about 6 apprentices in the discount IT department. So they are going also through our team. So we hope that when they go back to the other teams, they take it with them and they start thinking, oh, with MuleSoft it's easy to implement. I do it myself. I start to do this. So this was the agent development to the other teams.
Thank you.
Good point, though. You can start to build a community as well.
Maybe one main challenge we faced is the amount of data. So in a normal day, we have around 5,000 orders, and during Black Friday, we have 130,000 orders per day, and that's the challenge also to process all the data through all the systems. Especially the update frequencies of the prices and the stock during those Black Friday or Cyber Weeks are a challenge, because normally we get an update once a day, and during Black Friday day we process around 10 million updates on article master data with the prices and the stock. And that was one challenge, because the new integration is done over APIs, then we don't have the big challenge. But the older ones, they send us CSV files with all the articles in there, and then we have big files, and that was one of the main challenges, that we can process those data in a short time.
I think we're going to wrap up for a break now. If you've got any other questions, you can catch the two guys here, Andre and Marcus, during the coffee breaks. We'll be back here at 2 o'clock, so 15 minutes, and you might be wondering what these colourful balls on your desk are about. You'll find out about that just after the break.
Mine? Yeah. So thanks so much for having us here today. So it's a great pleasure to be here to present to you a little bit about LocalStack, what we do. So what we are is basically a company in the cloud developer productivity space. And we'll just give a brief intro about the agenda. We'll see how far we actually go through the content, because I see that maybe the setup is not ideal. We try to have like a brief intro first, and then show a couple of demos and like live demos, and also integration with MuleSoft. So maybe we can just skip to the next slide. So this is who we are. So my name is Waldemar. Nice to meet you. I'm the CTO and co-founder of LocalStack. We also have Gerda here. She will introduce herself in a second. She's the also co-founder and COO of LocalStack. So we're an early stage company that has grown out of an open source project, and we're actually a Swiss company. So we're headquartered in Switzerland, but we are also working with clients across the globe. My background is primarily in software engineering, and Gerda's background is in AI-based software, test automation, and yeah. So maybe next slide, or do you want? Sorry, words.
Already, just wanted to introduce myself as well. So Gerda, as Waldemar mentioned, co-founder of LocalStack. My background before LocalStack is really in the space of test automation in general. So I've been working in a couple of test automation startups, recently Tricentis, where I initially led our larger customers through their digital transformation journey when they wanted to set up their testing practices. and then later on moved into product management, where I maintained and basically released our first AI-based product there. And now at LocalStack, I'm taking care mainly of customers, operations, while Valdemar is our CTO and will guide you through some really exciting demos right afterwards. So a couple of words about LocalStack. What is LocalStack? So as Valdemar mentioned, we are a Swiss startup. We are both not really from Switzerland. We have met at the Technical University in Vienna in Austria. Our team is currently distributed actually across the globe, but the main part is currently in Vienna, Austria, through our connections to TU Vienna, but we also have people in Switzerland and actually from Brazil to India, across the globe. We started in the open source space, and we're a very successful project there. We have over 39,000 stars on GitHub, which is one of the top 170 repos on GitHub in terms of stars, which is pretty cool. Our Docker image has already been pulled over 84 million times, and we have a Slack channel, which is our LocalStack community, with over 10,000 people by now. So what is LocalStack? LocalStack is really a fully functional local cloud stack that lets you develop and test your entire AWS applications on your local machine without needing any internet connectivity, any calls to the actual AWS cloud. So in general, what we can do with that across our customer base is really to accelerate digital transformations. People really are trying to develop software faster. There are a lot of things that people are struggling in the process of developing software, and we're really tackling the issues and the pain points of developers itself. We have a very global customer base as well. So I would say the major part of our customers is really US-based, but they come from across the globe, from every industry, from different sizes of companies. We have startups reaching out to us. We have Fortune 500 companies reaching out to us who really see the pain, and developers are basically trying to establish a new way of how they develop cloud applications. So our entire model, how we interact with our customers, is very much bottom up. To the history of our project, so the project started in 2016. Actually, that was in Australia. That was where the first lines of code had been written. And afterwards, we got a nice tweet from Jeff Barr, who is the chief evangelist of AWS, which made the repo kind of public and kind of very popular. So thank you to Jeff if you ever see this. And since then, it's really been growing continuously. The first years, LocalStack has, I mean, it's kind of unbelievable to say, but it's kind of been a side project for us. And just last year, we really turned it into a company. So I know not many people now kind of raised their hand in terms of who has been using LocalStack so far. But maybe for the people in the live stream, so one thing to keep in mind is that it has grown a lot in the last year. So if someone has used it in the past and certain things, we're working in a different way. We have evolved it a lot in the last years. And as I said, it has turned into a successful company now. In the last 6 to 12 months, we've really been able to dramatically improve our performance. Our startup time has gone from 10 seconds to under 1 second. We have built a new plugin system, have built support for the newest and latest Macs out there, ARM65, Apple M1, and so on. So a lot of things have been happening to really make LocalStack more accessible. What we've also done, obviously, is we've refurbished our entire web interface, which we will show in a bit. And just last week, we also released a desktop application of LocalStack to make it even easier to use. So just to understand the audience a bit better, could you please raise your hand? So in which of those categories do you see yourself? Are you a developer, so basically someone who actively develops applications on a daily basis, who writes code on a daily basis? If that's you, can you raise your hand now? Okay, awesome. Okay, who sees themselves more like an engineering manager type of person? You're leading teams of developers but not really coding on a daily basis? Okay, great. And who's more like a project manager, product manager, someone who, yeah, awesome. Did we forget any group? Someone who sees themselves completely out of this? Okay. Customer. Okay, so the next question would be, where do you think that your organization is currently in their cloud journey? So are you basically just starting off? Everyone, I think that is a very appropriate question to ask. So a couple of years ago, it was more the question, do you even consider going to the cloud? Nowadays, no one really thinks about that anymore. So are you kind of just starting out and taking your first steps now? Then raise your hand. Okay. Have you basically been running a couple of projects by now, migrating a lot of services, but are still in the middle of things? Yeah, most of the people thought so. And who of you is kind of fully cloud native? Awesome, cool. And the last question that we already asked is, what cloud provider are you currently using? So who is using AWS currently? Okay. Who's using Azure? Okay, and who's on Google? Okay, awesome. Yeah,
all the clouds.
all the clouds, makes sense. So one thing that I just wanted to briefly touch upon is really this GitLab survey of last year, where we see that, especially as we're now operating in the space of DevOps and testing a lot, one of the main challenges over the last 3 years consistently that has been mentioned has really been the lack of test automation, and the test automation, the lack of it is really slowing down releases in companies nowadays. So while we're really seeing 2x faster releases in general through DevOps practices, we're seeing a lot more automation in the operations space. There's still a lot of lack in the testing space itself. Although there has been a lot of improvements, so people are really reporting a 13% increase just last year in terms of how their testing practices are working. And when looking at what people say that they want to focus on going forward, it is really this focus on cloud native development, as well as testing earlier, sooner, and basically testing across the board. So as I said, we are very much focused on developers, and we believe that if you want to drive innovation in your company, you really have to create a space for developers where they can thrive. Happy, productive developers usually lead to innovation. So the question is, what motivates developers? And contrary to popular belief, the same stuff that motivates everyone motivates also developers. So I have it from that book that is called The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. And the main things that motivate us usually are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And when we speak about autonomy, what we mean is that you really have control over the environments that you're developing in as a developer. You really can impact what tools you're using, if you're using open source software or not, maybe where you're working from. If you want to work from a coffee shop one day and from the office another day, all those things fall into the autonomy piece. And what obviously doesn't fall into it is if you're in a very restricted environment, if you can't really progress with your development. Then when we look at mastery, staying with the coffee shop for a second, developers are those magical unicorns that kind of take coffee and turn it into code. And what they really need to master their craft is really opportunities to learn new things, to embrace this trial and error in your organization. And obviously what will not help is if they cannot spend times on hackathons, coming to meetups like this and learning new things. And obviously purpose, everyone really wants to understand what they're working on and how it fits into the bigger picture, be involved very early on instead of just getting commands. So with the master and purpose piece, to be honest, we will not be able to help you today, because that's something that you have to figure out with your company culture, how your organization is set up and so on. But what we want to focus on with LocalStack is this autonomy piece, so really giving developers back control over their environment, freeing them from any inefficient dev and test loops, so they can really focus on building great software. So just to motivate you how the pain is in the life of a cloud developer, not everyone here is a cloud developer, let's take the example of Alice. So Alice is tasked with creating a new serverless web application for AWS Cloud. And everyone who has created an application before really knows that there are a lot of moving parts when you develop something in microservices for the cloud. So developing on her local machine, she sees a lot of those dependencies with resources that are directly in the cloud that she cannot access on her local machine. And she tries to resolve those resources first, obviously. And Alice and her team are using infrastructure as code, so as an example, Terraform, to configure their cloud resources. And 1 hour passes by. Alice is actually quite quick. She resolves all the dependencies and can basically move on with deploying her code to the cloud. And that actually takes quite a bit of time. So she figures out that deploying something to the cloud takes 1, 2, sometimes 5 minutes, depending on the size of an application. And after a while, she realizes, well, she doesn't have to do it just once. She has to do it a couple of times because there was an error in her deployment. And basically, she sees how slow and tedious the entire process is. She always has to repackage stuff on her local machine, upload it to the cloud, run it, see what results comes back before she can even move on. So 2 hours later, we finally have it all up and running. Alice is putting something into a new feature branch. She pushes it to the company's CI/CD pipeline, and now she just wants to get the test running. But what happens, obviously, is she has a failed build, and now she wants to know what the issue is. So very difficult to debug in such cloud environments, because contrary to what you may be used to when you're developing applications where you can use a debugger in your IDE, when you're developing against the cloud, you don't have that debugging capability. So what she has to do is she has to use the logs that she's getting from AWS. Well, obviously Alice forgot to turn on the debugger, so logging is off. So she has to go through the process one more time, quite frustrated at the end of the day. Finally, she gets the logs back. And what she sees is a couple of things that she can resolve, but also some very exotic type of errors that she's never seen before, and that have something to do with the deeper down application logic. So here again, a debugger would be very, very helpful, which she obviously doesn't have, so she uses a lot of Stack Overflow. And 5 hours later, after a lot of Stack Overflow debugging, she finally is successful with her deployment, and it turned out it was not a trivial task. She maybe had to do like 15 to 20 deployment cycles, each taking 1 or 2 minutes. So even without the hassle of basically debugging the application, just the idle time was 30 minutes to an hour. So that is kind of not really very motivating in terms of how you're doing your work. And just doing a little digression, there are a lot of very opinionated developers out there on Stack Overflow, some even comparing the cloud now to the mainframe era. Because even in the mainframe era, basically you submitted your code to a system and then you waited sometimes an entire night until you got your logs back the next day to even figure out what was going on. It was extremely slow, and the only way how we really got over that back then is to get development back to the local. And some people are really saying that the cloud now is the new mainframe, and the reason for that would be basically because you don't have those debugging capabilities that are very helpful, and generally you're just relying on those log outputs, and it's all just taking way too much time until you get your results back. So moving back to Alice, and actually talking about her dev manager now, Jane. So after a while, Alice and her team are using Git flow for developing their CI/CD feature branches, and there's an explosion of branches after a while. There are different environments that are created, and those large number of dev environments in the cloud become very, very hard to manage after a while. So that's not just an issue in terms of how to manage the environments, it also costs a lot. So Jane is contacted by the finance department, what's going on in your teams. Maybe they're even working on innovative projects, trying to iterate very quickly, not really thinking about cleaning up stuff all the time. but that's something that they have to spend time on because really they have to get the costs under control again. So really what we can see is that this happens over and over again. So recent numbers show that $17.6 billion or 35% of cloud costs are just for cloud waste. So these are idle resources that are never being used. So I hope you kind of get the idea. Cloud development for a cloud developer is very slow, tedious, and pretty costly. So I don't want to talk bad about the cloud. The cloud is awesome, and obviously it helps us a lot in different ways. It helps us with scaling things out without us needing any resources. It definitely helps with driving innovation in that sense. But those managed services that really make the operational things very, very easy for us don't make the development part easy for us. So this execution scalability that comes from the cloud doesn't directly translate into developer efficiency. As we discussed now, developers have this very slow process. Things take time when they're deploying stuff. Reproducibility of your code is a very big issue. Often things are very blocking, so you use one environment and then the entire team is blocked of using it. You see a Slack message maybe where someone is like, hey, I'm currently running something in our staging environment, please don't use it for the next 2 hours, and so on. And obviously another big issue is that in organizations nowadays, often the cloud is very restricted in terms of who has access to it, how much access they have, and so on. So it's really difficult to get on with your cloud innovation. It's not just the developers that are struggling, obviously, as I touched upon, it's also the finance teams that are kind of seeing those high costs popping up. More realistically speaking, usually finance doesn't really say anything about it. They know cloud is important and they just use the credit card. What we're seeing more is that really developers are reaching out and saying, hey, we see so many resources being wasted, and after a while I think the finance teams will also see it more and more. And obviously in QA you're also struggling a lot with such difficult processes because people just test less. When it's difficult to test, you will definitely test less, and this reproducibility of your environment is really hard to get. So therefore, basically, QA is very much blocked. And our mission at LocalStack really is to make this cloud development fun and give developers back control over their environments so they stop wasting all the time with inefficient dev and test loops. So to give just a bird's eye view of how LocalStack works, so in general, basically what you get is a AWS in a Docker container. You deploy it on your local machine, and all the APIs that you would have in real AWS, you now have on your local as well. Obviously, you can deploy the same thing in your CI environment. So basically, your application would move from your local machine to the CI environment without ever needing that access to the real cloud, making reproducibility, debuggability, and so on way easier. And Valdemar would then show a couple of demos that really showcase how that works. And in general, what we're also focusing on is this concept of cloud pods, as we call it. Alireza here has been a very driving force in developing this, so thanks for being here. So the idea behind this is that you basically can share the state of your applications with your colleagues and with across the entire CI system have this state and reproducibility built into it. In general, LocalStack ships very easily as a Docker container. We support around 60 APIs now, compute, various databases, messaging, and some more sophisticated APIs like QLDB or Athena. So why LocalStack, as we really mentioned, just to sum it up, it's for reproducibility on your local machine, it's for speeding up quicker development cycles, it's the ease of use that usually leads to higher quality, it's this reduced management overhead that you get out of it, and really removing restrictions whenever there are cloud restrictions around. So obviously also the cost part, as I said, it doesn't seem to be the driving force of our customers, but it's definitely something to mention. And with that, I want to give it over to Valdemar for the actually fun and exciting part here, which is our demos.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So this was really, I guess, quite a lot to take in. So thanks a lot for the introduction, Goethe. I mean, it would be great to get maybe some initial feedback and thoughts. If sort of, I mean, does that story kind of resonate with you? Has anyone seen, you know, similar stories maybe in your organizations, or is that something you have heard about? Maybe before we dive a bit more into, make it a bit more concrete, because I think it might be a bit abstract now. But maybe if there's already any questions at this stage or any feedback, happy to take that. Otherwise, we can also do the Q&A later. But yeah, just generally feel free to interrupt anytime. So what I would like to do, make it a bit more concrete, and I'll try to balance it with the mic here, so maybe you can help me, because I'm going to need both both hands. All right, so what we want to do is essentially, you know, show a little bit like what are we actually talking about here, right? So to give you an impression of how this can be used. So what we're going to do first is kind of, you know, just basically make some hello world examples with LocalStack. So we're going to start up the container, the LocalStack container, and then just run a few CLI commands from the command line to interact with the system. So I'm going to switch over here, and so what we have, I'm just going to stop that again. So, and by the way, so from here onwards, things will get a bit technical, so you'll see terminals and web UIs with some, so just bear with me, and if there's any questions or anything is unclear, then just let me know. But I'm also going to try and zoom in here a bit so you can actually see. So what I'm going to, oops, I feel like I'm already running out of memory here with the screen share. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just start up LocalStack. So this is what you sort of see when you start it up. You get like this, you know, it runs in your terminal. And then basically once it's up and running, it will say ready, and then it's ready to go. I'm also going to do a clear here. So now, the ones that have been working with AWS in the past will know the AWS command line, right? So this is basically, oops. So the AWS command line is basically the entry point to using the cloud, right? So you can run, I don't know, you can create S3 buckets, you can create SQS queues. It's basically interacting with the infrastructure. And what we provide is a command that's called AWS Local, which is basically has the same functionality as the real AWS command line, but it's using the local endpoints. So essentially, again, like what it's running here in this terminal window is basically LocalStack. It is up and running, and it's now ready to serve the AWS APIs, right? So we can now start with some very basic example. I'm just going to switch over here. Sorry again for a lot of the code that you see here, but basically just moving down here with my first sample. Right, so just very, very basic sample. So we're going to create an S3 bucket. So this is the command for creating an S3 bucket. AWS local S3 MV. All right, so the bucket was created. We're gonna, you know, create a file where we're just gonna say hello world. So we just created the file. We're gonna copy the file to the bucket. So we say AWS local S3 copy. And again, like all the interactions are happening on local machine. It never really talks to the real cloud. And then we can list the contents of this bucket, and it is in there. So this is kind of really the most simple sort of vanilla hello world you can do with LocalStack, basically. And the complexity of use cases will increase as we go over time. Now, and everyone's still following so far. I just want to make sure that we. Some questions there?
Just
following. Okay. All right. So. That's great, cool. So we now created a bucket. That was easy. So let's switch back here. You can also create an SQS queue, for example. An SQS queue is something where you can put a message in and you can retrieve it on some other end. So there's a whole variety of different services we can use. So obviously there's lots of different configuration options, and we're not gonna go through all of them now. But essentially, what LocalStack is a highly configurable system. So essentially, you know, you can configure the network configurations, which services you want to start up locally, how you want to run things like Lambda functions. Has anyone heard of Lambda functions or maybe Google Cloud functions? So I think there's some. So it's basically this this way of running code without having to run a server, so this kind of serverless workloads. So we also support that in LocalStack. And there's a whole bunch of other configurations which we're not going to go into detail because they don't matter too much here. Maybe what's more interesting is we also have a web user interface, right? Because web UIs are great, so we can take a quick look at that. So this is what it currently looks like. We're actually just going through a bit of a redesign as well, so some things might look a bit different in the different views. But basically, what you can see here is a dashboard where you see, how has your LocalStack instance been used with some basic usage statistics. So, for example, in my account, there have been 310 API gateway endpoints have been created, 238 Cognito user pools, and just gives you like some basic overview of how the LocalStack instance has been used. And then also there is what we call the resource browser. So I'm just going to go to one of the views here, which is basically Cognito. And for those of you who have worked with Amazon, they will recognize some similarity with the AWS console, right? So there's the graphical user interface for the cloud, and we have something that is obviously much simpler than the real one, but this allows you to interact with the local instance. So what I can do here now, for example, is I can say I want to create a user pool, just give it a name. You can also create some attributes if you want, but I'm just going to say test. Now, all right, so what happened now is that the user interface made a call to my local instance, which is running here, and it's created this user pool, right? And it has the same functionality as the real cloud, but it's all happening on the local machine. All right, so still okay? Okay, cool. So seeing nodding faces, that's great. So next thing we can do is we're just going to do a small quick start. So we have this in our web UI, which is basically a sample application, and what we're going to do here while we're describing it, I'm just going to hit the deploy button. So what this sample app is going to do is the following. So we're going to deploy this application stack here. I hope you can see it also from the back. It contains a relatively typical stack of services in a cloud environment. So we have an API gateway, which is kind of the central entry point for our microservice. We're basically going to create a small microservice here. So there's an API gateway. When you make a request to it, it actually calls a Lambda function, right? And the Lambda function then puts an item to an SQS queue. There's another Lambda function which reads off items from the SQS queue. So we call this the request worker Lambda. Then this actually triggers a step function workflow. So step function is essentially just sort of a sequence of steps that does certain actions. And in this particular case, it's two activities here. We call one processing Lambda, which updates the state in the DynamoDB table, and then we have an archiving Lambda, which stores a state to an S3 bucket. So I hope this is somewhat clear. It's basically like a typical like asynchronous pattern. So some requests are coming in, we put them to a queue, and then there's some workers basically reading items off that queue and stores the result to an S3 bucket. That's essentially what we're going to try and do here. And I'm going to just switch back to the view here, and I hope that the demo gods are all with us, which I'm not entirely sure they are, but let me see. I think we have to restart the app real quick. So for that, just going to remove this, because there was actually still a configuration from a demo before, which I should have removed beforehand. So I'm just gonna demo gods. It's always tricky to do live demos, but we would like to do them anyway. So but bear with us. Yeah, but again, like we are sort of deploying the stack, and again, like the idea is that all these resources that you can see here are basically running on the local machine, right? So that's the whole idea. And later on, we'll also see how this integrates with MuleSoft, because after all, we're here with and hosted by this event. By the way, thanks so much for organizing this well and having us. But what we're also going to show is later on how this actually connects to the MuleSoft system. But I'm just going to switch back again here and see. And by the way, I hope that the battery is going to be fine. Just have a bit of a issue sometimes with the. I think the problem is that the MuleSoft is still calling the SQS queue here from the other view. So probably we're just gonna skip this part of the demo. But essentially the what this will look like is essentially, and apologies for the demo effect here. But basically what happened is that this thing gets deployed locally, and then we can make a request to these resources that are deployed on the local machine, right? So we're just gonna go back here. Yeah, so the reason why it was actually giving us some troubles is because I still had the MuleSoft running here and it was sort of calling the SQS queue. That's actually part we wanna show afterwards, but maybe we can actually switch to this one right now. All right, so moving on and sort of looking at what we have here. Terrible demo effect. Is it clear so far what we're trying to show, or any questions at this stage? Okay, it's clear. Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm just going to let this deploy in the background here while we just move on to the other example. So it's not deploying. So the other thing I wanted to briefly show is how the experience of working with the real cloud versus with the local environment, right? So what we're going to do is Lambda functions. I think that's something that some of you have already mentioned before, you're familiar with. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a small Lambda function. And basically what it has is just this code. So it has this handler, and I hope you can see it also from the back. This handler function is basically the entry point into Lambda. So you basically get the event of the invocation. You can do some print statements and do some other logic. So this is essentially we're now going to deploy this piece of code against the real cloud, right? So that's a very frequent use case a lot of people have. You want to deploy a Lambda function and then see how it works, see what it does. And I'm gonna again briefly take a look here at my commands. So I just prepared some commands here that we can use to deploy this Lambda function against real clouds. So first of all, we're gonna create a zip file with this code. So we now created a zip file because that's how Lambda functions work. They first get packaged into a zip file, and then we can create a function, and then afterwards we can invoke this function, right? So we're actually really gonna call the real AWS cloud to invoke this function. So what you'll see is after a couple of seconds, we see some status code below here which says function error unhandled. So there's some error, something's wrong in our code that we just deployed and ran on AWS. So what I want to show is briefly why that is. By the way, I'm also gonna just click on Firefox here real quick. So this is now the real AWS environment. I'm just gonna sort of really quickly log in here to show you sort of what Gerda was referring to before as like one day in the life of a cloud developer, quote unquote. And so what we're going to do here now is just going to take a look at the Lambda function that was deployed and invoked. I'm going to go here Lambda, and takes a bit of time. All right, so just checking if we're in the right region. I think we need to select use central 1. And right, so we have this test APIForce. This is the Lambda function, and we just invoked it before. But again, like there was some kind of an error, so we need to find out what was actually going on. So we can go into the monitor tab here. We can then check out the logs. Creates a new window. So we take a look at the logs, and just checking out, there's a log stream, and then we see, there's some error here. Again, you can read it from the back. We get some access denied error. Something obscure is happening here. We don't really know. So this is something that's very frequent, right? So we deployed our code, we ran the Lambda, and then you can't access a certain piece of the infrastructure. For example, here we were trying to list the buckets, but it was giving us an access denied. It's kind of expected from the cloud perspective, but it's a bit hard to figure out. We actually have to go to these logs here and see what's happening. Now what we can do is we can go and fix this. So we would have to essentially go into what's called IAM. So basically we need to give our Lambda function the permission to access the S3 buckets. So again, opening a new tab and just sort of giving this role that we had before, API, test Lambda. So we just need to give it some additional permissions, attach policies. So now we're going to say we want to have S3 access. All right, so we're going to add it. We need to confirm below. Attach policies. Okay, and now we can sort of upload the same Lambda again. So we can do an update function code. So we kind of package the Lambda again, upload the zip file to AWS, and then we invoke it again, and then let's see if the next invocation will succeed. It's now invoking something else. Now we need to look at the log again. So it's you can basically see what's happening, like the whole flow of sort of interacting with the cloud. It's you eventually get there, but it's a lot of like moving parts in order to look at the logs and so on, right? So if I just contrast it now with how it looks like in LocalStack, so here, this terminal window here now, and I realize that this is all probably just text blob for you. You probably can't see which terminal I'm in. And sorry about that. But basically, what we're going to do is we're going to create a function locally. So I'm just going to switch back here to my IDE. So the part 2 of this mini demo is now that we create a Lambda function on the local machine. So we're not talking to AWS anymore, just locally. And then we're going to show you something that we call a hot deploy. So now this Lambda function was deployed on the local machine on LocalStack, and I can now invoke it from here. So I can run again this AWS local commands to say I want to invoke this Lambda function. Again, this is now, as you can see in the terminal on the left-hand side here, it was now actually running this Lambda function that I just invoked, and it's giving us some output here, something like some log outputs. So now the thing is, the interesting part is what we can now do is we can actually go back to the code directly, to our Lambda code, make changes, and immediately get the feedback. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make a small change to fix something in this code. I don't need to redeploy. I just invoke the function again, locally, and you will see it gets invoked here, and then we see hello from LocalStack, right? So I hope you can again read this from back in the back, and let me change it again to something like hi APIForce audience, and this is similar to what we saw in the previous talk where we made some live changes, and we just want to see immediately what is the effect of this, right? So I'm just gonna invoke this function again. I made the change again. There's no need for redeployment. And after this next invocations, we see here, hi APIForce audience. So, I mean, I hope you sort of get the general idea of, working with the cloud is great. Has a lot of potential, a lot of scalability advantages. But just to have like a quick feedback loops locally can be very beneficial to run things on your local machine. In fact, it goes so far, I would say, that it was what we're seeing in our working with our customers and users is that a lot of companies are starting to build similar things. They maybe have some mocking environments or some handcrafted emulation frameworks. But there is certainly a very strong need for having like these local dev loops. Are we still good? Does this what I'm showing here? And I'm sorry for all the text blob. It's just hard to read probably from the back. But this is the general idea that what we're trying to do. Now maybe as the next step, also being a bit mindful of the time, we have lots of other things to show, but maybe just showing the integration with MuleSoft, because I think that's the really interesting part also for the audience here. So what we did in the last, in preparation for this workshop is to have a bit of an integration with AnyPoints, the studio. So I'm gonna start LocalStack again here, And what we're going to show now real quick is, so starting it up here, we're going to create one SQS queue. So we have an SQS queue here that is called Q1. So SQS is basically the simple queuing service. It's like a message queue in AWS. So we're going to create this queue. Again, it's created on localhost, LocalStack. And then we're gonna switch over to the Anypoint Studio. And what we've prepared here is a small sample. I mean, we're by no means experts, but we're sort of, as we've been working with the tool, discovered a lot of cool features, and especially all the AWS connectors that are in there. So there is various connectors for various AWS services, things like DynamoDB. Again, I hope you can read it in the back. EC2, RDS, S3, like lots of different connectors. And a lot of them have the ability to actually configure a local endpoint. So let's maybe take a look at one of the one for S3. So here we're creating a bucket, and the connection information here. I'm just going to go to the connection details. It has this advanced tab, and here we can set a custom service endpoint. And the custom service endpoint, which is going to set to basically the localhost address on port 4566. This is where LocalStack is running, which means that all the S3 interactions with S3 buckets from MuleSoft, any point studio are now going to run against the local instance and not against the real cloud. Okay, so what does this example actually do? So we have one HTTP listener here, which just listens for an incoming HTTP message. And just creates queue and bucket. Then we have an SQS queue, which is a receive message event. So we can receive a message from the SQS queue, and we can then invoke a Lambda function. That's also part of the connectors here. And then finally, we also have one HTTP endpoint that actually receives a message and then can send this message to the SQS queue. It's relatively simple, so we're gonna just sort of spin it up here. So now this is basically packaging the application. So basically running the sample and deploying the app. And what we should then be able to see, again, so we have these two endpoints. Let me just take a quick look at them. So one is called this listener, which allows us to send a message. It has the path /ping, so which is we can send a message to /ping. And this whole thing is running on port 8081, I believe. So this is also part of the configuration here of the connector. So in the connector, it actually the port is 8081. So on localhost, we can now send a request to this thing, and then it should trigger the flow with the SQS message. Okay, so demo gods again, hopefully are with us. So once this is all started up here, it is still deploying. I have a fairly old piece of hardware, so it might take a bit. Yeah, right.
Yeah, maybe in the meantime, who was using AWS? I think you guys, right?
Yeah.
What are you using from AWS? Are you using queues as well and SNS? Or?
Actually, I used LocalStack 2 years ago.
Okay.
I like it a lot. I used it a lot to showcase for developers not used to the cloud, but used to the old way Java developers are developing. And I just found it alive, found that and worked really good. So it's nice to see the new things, the UI and things like that. So it's really positive. And something that I want to stress is that all the AWS SDKs, you can still use the same, the CLI, LC maybe the wrong one now, but you can use a lot of the building blocks. So I really like it.
That is a fantastic point. Yeah, actually, maybe just to follow up on this, what you just said, and I think you might want to connect it better.
Yeah, I will connect.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it should be charging.
Yeah, no, but I think you need to charge yours, right? I think it's
I know. We only have one bucket.
Yeah. Just sort of because you mentioned integration, I think that's a very, very interesting point. Like we're showing now the MuleSoft integration, which is really interesting for this audience. But there's also a whole suite of other things that LocalStack natively integrates with. So essentially all the way from these infrastructures, code tools like Terraform, for example, or different language SDKs if you work with Java or Python or different. So essentially, whenever there's a tool or a library that works with AWS, it essentially also works with LocalStack because we're using the same APIs, right? We're literally re-implementing the APIs. And yeah, so just sort of picking up that point that you mentioned, which was really great. So now moving back to our application, so this is now deployed, so this is all great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to send a message to this ping endpoint, right? So this is the one that we saw before, which has the HTTP listener. And again, once we send the message there, MuleSoft will pick it up and it will forward a message to an SQS queue. It also listens on the same SQS queue and then trigger a Lambda function, right? So and this is fine. This is just some output information, and I'm curious to see. Yeah, okay. So he has arrived here, and yes. So of course, it's great. So we're now getting 404. Why? Because we didn't deploy our Lambda function yet, right? So we've received the SQS message. MuleSoft tried to invoke the Lambda function, but it wasn't there yet. So that's also great in terms of the feedback loop. So we can now create the function which we had predefined there. So just creating the Lambda function now. It's there. I'm going to send another ping to the ping endpoint, and now we actually see in this left terminal here, it's giving us hello world, right? So what we saw is literally sort of the whole round trip, like from this terminal, we're calling the endpoint in MuleSoft. It was doing it, putting it into an SQS queue in LocalStack, was getting a message out of LocalStack again into MuleSoft, and then running the Lambda function in MuleSoft again, in the LocalStack. So hopefully that is giving you a bit of an impression of sort of what's possible. And again, I really want to stress that it's also great to see the different connectors in MuleSoft and really kind of working with them has been quite nice because you don't have to deal so much with the manually coding the integrations. You basically just drag and drop and it works pretty much out of the box, which is nice. So how are we doing time-wise? Just want to make sure. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Okay, so just moving on, and then we can also take some Q&A. But yeah, I think we touched upon a little bit about the different integrations that are there, and I'm just gonna go back to the slideshow. Again, in the interest of time, if you're interested, we can also do follow-ups or point you to some samples that we have with the different demos that we can show, which we're probably not going to go through right now. We looked at the hot reloading. So Lambda hot reloading is basically this idea that you make some change locally, but it's immediately reflected in your codes. And yeah, a few more things. One thing that we just recently released is we call this S3 bucket mounting. So essentially, it is a mechanism to mount your local file system as an S3 bucket, which can be quite useful if you're working with S3. I see some nodding faces, or some of you may know what I'm talking about. So it's always trying to bring the cloud a bit closer to your local machine, to your local environment, right? And we have a bunch of different tricks that we try to apply there to make it a more seamless experience. Maybe just one more thing I can briefly show, because again, we love UIs. We just recently launched a user interface, because what you saw in the terminal is nice, but it's a lot of commands which are not always easy to follow, and a lot of configuration options. So there's also a just see if I can find it now, the Cockpit app, which is essentially a web application that is running on your local desktop, and you can basically use this to spin up your LocalStack instance and control it from here, take a look at the services and so on. So that is something that will become also interesting over time, maybe as people are using this more and more locally, a way to control the instance and look into what's happening. So yeah, so again, maybe be mindful of time to sort of wrap up with some final thoughts. Yeah, MuleSoft, we showed the integration. This is what we did. Again, just to sort of reiterate quickly, we created an SQS queue with an HTTP listener, connected the listener to the queue, and trigger the Lambda function all sort of from the local machine. Maybe just sort of one final sort of word on the collaboration patterns that we briefly touched upon before. So now you can think of this LocalStack instance, which by default is an ephemeral environment. So when you stop the container and you start it up again, the state is basically gone. So you always get a fresh instance. But we also have a persistence mechanism, so you can take one of your LocalStack instances and store a snapshot of the entire state that's in there, and then easily share it with your team members, right? So somebody can, take your state and you can push it to, maybe here's Bob and Alice. So Bob's working on an application, and Alice can help out debugging on the exact same application states, and that's something that's very, very useful, and that a lot of our users are quite excited about. Also, if you think about this reproducibility, if you have a CI run, right, you have your tests running in a CI environment, you can also take a snapshot with the cloud pod and pull the state into your local machine, and you can immediately do debugging and see what's going on. All right, so I think with that, we're probably gonna wrap up with some Q&A. Also, please feel free to reach out. We have a Slack channel if you're interested to join, and yeah, happy to take any questions you may have or any feedback.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
Yeah.
There are no stupid questions.
Thank you, Aldeman, for the great presentation and great product. Yeah, really, the probably stupid question. Is there still anything that you cannot do with your amazing product locally, and you still require AWS success?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. So first of all, there's definitely physical limits to the local machine, right? So if, for example, you are working with some very huge data sets and you want to run some queries over large data, for example, to a certain degree it's possible on the local machine, but there's just some limitations. What we're more and more exploring is what we call hybrid scenarios. So you have part of your stack locally and part in the real cloud, and then we do things like prefetching, for example. If you access a certain file in a bucket, we actually fetch it from the real cloud and make it available locally. So there's a bunch of things that we're now exploring with. But yeah, you're totally right that not everything can always be happening locally. But increasingly the space of this hybrid setups will become more and more interesting, I think.
Thank you.
Good question.
I have already also a question, because not sure if I missed it, which for me, because I basically develop on a daily basis, is the testing which you've mentioned. So the state especially, because I don't test it for 1 hour, I test it maybe for a couple of days or even longer. So the feature of having these snapshots, is this something which is already available, or is this work in progress? That's the part which I didn't get.
Yeah, good point. So definitely this is already available, and there's different shades of gray of the persistence. So the simplest case is where you can spin up an instance and store the state into just a local file system, and then you start LocalStack again, and you have the same state. So that is available. That's the plain vanilla persistence. The cloud pods that we showed before is taking it a step further, where it actually creates an archive basically of the state, pushes it to a server. It's one of the servers that we maintain, and then somebody else can pull it down. And that's already fully available. It's in the product, so you can use it. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Sorry, if there are no other questions, I would have one question. Yes. Yeah. First of all, thank you very much, and I find it really interesting, because I had 2 years ago the same problem as you had. So we were using SNS and SQS heavily in the integration projects for async patterns, and we had about 20 to 30 developers. And the first problem we had is that not everybody had accounts, or at least credentials to connect to the AWS environment. So we were actually looking for a local environment to develop in AWS, and back then we didn't find anything. So I would have been really happy to have something like that. I have one question regarding the EC2 instances. I think we asked already the last time, but in the MuleSoft space we have the RTF deployment model, where you basically run up the EC2 instance for more or less on-prem deployment. Yeah. Would this also be possible to do with LocalStack?
Yeah, absolutely. This is great. And again, maybe we can follow up after in the coffee chat or so. But we actually had one small demo also prepared here. I think it's in the backup slides. Right. So we call this is a new feature that we call EC2 containers. And this is actually the wrong. So basically, what you just mentioned, like EC2 is basically virtual machines, right? And they are a bit harder to run locally. I mean, this is also possible. You can spin up an actual VM, but they're quite resource intensive and doesn't scale as well. So what we now added is a new feature where you can actually run your VMs as Docker containers. So Docker is probably something that most of you are familiar with. It's basically these lightweight containers, and that makes it really easy for you to actually run EC2 instances. And they appear as EC2 instances. They have the same interface, same API, but in fact what we do is we run under the covers, we run them as Docker containers. So that's something that's already also available. We're quite excited. We can, if you're interested, we can do a follow-up or a coffee break or something. Because yeah, we also see this a lot that these serverless applications, Lambda functions, is definitely that some people are using, but there's still a lot of workloads that are just using EC2 for deploying the applications.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. Any more? Yeah. So
hey, thank you for the great presentation. Just have a question. Basically, you're currently only supporting AWS. Do you have any plans to support Azure or GCP in the future?
Yeah, we're kind of anticipating that question. So we're currently mostly focusing on AWS. That's right. We started a beta program for Azure in a couple of months ago. We still sort of very much focus on AWS, but we understand that that Azure is the next one to be supported. So it's already in our pipeline. And, so if you're interested, feel free to reach out and we can set something up. Google Cloud maybe afterwards, but I think Azure and AWS will keep us busy for the time being for now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we are going to continue now with our next slot. So this is a product which MuleSoft has recently launched. You may have heard of it maybe last year. We had a couple of implementation on Salesforce. So there is the solution which I'm going to present has two different versions. One is standalone MuleSoft Composer and the other one is based on Salesforce, but actually it's the same capabilities. But the one which is for Salesforce is of course easier to use for the Salesforce users. And the challenge we have with the business teams, we hope to solve with MuleSoft Composer, because everything around hyper automation is strategically growing on every company. And most of the important goals for CIOs is to really increase the productivity and save cost for their organization and employees. And MuleSoft Composer is one of these solutions which can help you to drive automation for citizen developers, people who are not so technical when building integration and automating repetitive tasks. So let's go to the next slide, please. So what we have seen on many organizations, that business users need to access data seamlessly to innovate faster. There are different use cases where this might be required. So either you have existing AnyPoint platform in place, you have a governed API-led connectivity network. Still, when business want to do automation on their specific repetitive task, they need to come to IT and request to automate these tasks. With business being able to do it on themselves, we expect business to increase the automation and productivity and boost also the speed to market. Next slide, please. Okay. So with MuleSoft Composer, what we have implemented is we say everyone is able to automate, and this is actually where Waldemar was talking about the gods of demo, so demo gods. In our case, it's most times the demo devils, and I will try to provoke those even more today, because with MuleSoft Composer, we say everyone is able to automate repetitive tasks, and we will have someone, maybe of you, I will select somebody to do actually the demo case live here on screen, and see how, if it is really that easy, what we are trying to promise here. So what are the different connectors we are providing? So out of the box, currently we have 18 connectors with MuleSoft Composer being available in the market, and also take care about the numbers. We have later on a quiz, so what we are telling here might be asked in the quiz as well. So you can integrate Jira with Google Sheet, or you have this Salesforce Agile Accelerator, which is also a development backlog management tool. You want to integrate this with Jira. It's super simple, super easy, and very soon we are going to release the HTTP connector, which will help you to call basically any API which is governed through any point platform. And this will make the use case business empowerment through IT in a government, in a governed IT platform will be super useful. So let's go into the demo use case. What we are going to do now is we will be entering and automating leads from Google Sheet. So somebody of you will be entering leads in Google Sheet. These leads will be automatically transferred and created in Salesforce as lead objects, and we will try to get a notification using Slack that a new lead has been entered. Yeah? So do we have any volunteers? Okay, otherwise, you know what is super simple. So let me maybe show the task, what we are trying to do. So let's go into the browser. So this is our sheet we will be using. So you can see we have here, it's a workbook, we have 6 sheets, so we are on the 6th sheet. It's super simple, we have just the last name, so you can enter here Leib und Gut, and we expect Leib und Gut to be entered in Salesforce. So actually here, we should see Leib und Gut entering. Currently it's just a demo lead we have created, ABCDE, and once this lead is entered, we would expect a Slack message automatically triggered in Slack that a new lead came in. So who is capable of doing it? You know, if nobody volunteers, I will select one of my sales, because you know they have to believe in the product, and we were saying that business is capable of doing it. So let's see who can volunteer from them. Marcel, what about you? Come on.
Are you kidding me?
No, you can come. Come on. Applause for Marcel to join on stage and do the demo.
So I don't have to present myself afterwards anymore.
No, you will be live streamed in YouTube.
Exactly,
now.
I know. This is thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I will remember that.
How do you feel?
Very well, thank you.
Very well? Okay.
So no preparation, and you just call me on stage.
Okay, so you are a technical guy, or what are you doing at MuleSoft?
I'm a sales guy.
Ever worked with any point platform?
I have seen a demo, yes.
Okay, I think that's sufficient to create a flow in Composer. So let's come here. Yes. So let me just quickly show you Composer. So here you can see we are now in Composer. And let me go on the other side, so you will do it on yourself.
Okay.
So what the people can see here is these are all the different flows we have created in Composer so far. And all of those are for sure inactive. These are my demo preps. But now I ask Marcel to create a new flow. So you see the button?
Yes.
Over there?
I can read, yes. That's
okay. So
that
that's
helps,
good.
yeah.
So let's see if the demo devil is with you or
Still,
demo bot.
no, it's running, yeah, okay.
Okay, Marcel, one second. What do you see now in front of you?
Okay, I see what should start this flow, and there I have different sources like Salesforce, Google Sheets, Workdays, and so on. And I assume we start with Google Sheets.
Why would you start with Google Sheet?
Because I paid attention before, at least. So Google Sheets, Salesforce, and Slack.
Okay, so that's already a big benefit. So once business pays attention, we can get things running.
Okay.
So Google Sheets. So let's go into Google Sheet, and that's selected. And we have already prepared the connection. So Marcel would select now one, but if you want to create a new one, you can click here on Add New Google Sheet Connection, and then you can configure the details. But we don't want Marcel to struggle with all the connection details. So let's select the first one, Marcel.
That's okay. Select an option. Select an option. Field is required.
Okay, so what is it? Open it.
It's a new row.
Okay,
new
so
spreadsheet.
Okay, so now Composer is asking us when the event should be triggered. We said whenever a new line is entered in Google Sheet, which means here a new row, we are going to select this option. And the next thing what Marcel already did was he selected the workbook. Marcel, you're too fast.
Oh,
so slow down a bit.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so now what are you looking into it?
So I'd chosen new row, APIForce demo sheet. It's the only one which is available.
Yeah.
And then probably one of these sheets.
So which one, how would you find it out?
I heard something about 6 the last time.
Okay, so that's also enough, good information. So let's go for 6, because we are managing our leads on 6. So now we are configured. So we have configured the Google Sheet side, and now we are going to add a new step. So what should be happening once we are entering a new lead? So click on plus.
Click on plus, yes. So that's the workflow, huh?
Yes.
And then remembering it shall go to Salesforce.
Yes. Select Salesforce.
And now, which one? The APIForce, I assume.
1 second. So here Marcel doesn't know, but he did select already, so you can still change the connection. So we configured it. You can click on the 3 dots, change connection. So as a next step, once the row is entered, we want to create a lead in Salesforce. So let's select the second one, please.
Okay. I trust you, huh?
Okay, now click on change. I think it was the second one. Okay, so now what we want to do, we want to create something. So open the options.
I assume that's new action, create new record.
Exactly, that's the right one. And now, this is Salesforce, it's flooding you with different object types, so it's type lead.
Type.
Just
lead, okay.
Just lead the way.
Lead. Yeah, and just general lead.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
And now what Marcel sees is the user, the last name, which is required, obviously one field in Salesforce which we can enter here. So you can map the last name with the last name we have prepared in the sheet. So select last name. No, down the last one. Open it again.
Sorry.
Yes.
Schneider. Okay.
Okay, so this last name is something we have entered in Google Sheets. So Marcel, if you would go to the Google Sheet again, just to explain what's happening here. So this is our sheet 6, and the row or the column we have chosen here is last name. So we are mapping this entry, whatever in the new row will be entered and taken from the sheet and put into Salesforce last name field. Okay, I think that's enough for you. So now go back. I think here we are good. So let's add a new step. And what we said, what we want to do as a last step.
Which is the inform Slack.
Exactly. So open, go for Slack. Select the one option we have.
The only one which is here.
Okay, and now what Marcel is offered is he can enter here, get users by email, post a Slack message, or send a direct message to a user And we have created a channel called APIForce. So let's go and select a new message to the channel. So post message. Yeah. And now you can change the option. Click on the magnifier. It's here. Pick up from list. And select the channel APIForce. Select an option on the top. Here. Okay. You see, it's not prepared. So he does not know which channel it was. So we said
clue, yeah.
It's APIForce.
APIForce.
And now in the message, click on the message. What we can do now is we can create on custom expression. This is also something which Composer is providing. So when you click on custom expression, the first option, you will see that you go into a place where you can type something now. Yeah? So you can type here new, let's be more, you're from business, come on. Okay, so new lead comes in from Salesforce. Okay. And now do a space. Space, just, yeah. And you can select now different artifacts like last name, just right away after your text, and this will be connected dynamically. So this parameter last name is connected then with the Salesforce text which Marcel has entered. And that's it, Marcel.
Are you sure?
Once again?
Are you sure?
Let's see. So let's go on apply. So Marcel has created now the flow, which was quite simple. So let's test it out. So click on test, Marcel, and give it a name, Marcel's flow. That's you can see what limitation means. Special character. Okay, Marcel flow. Okay, so now you can see on the top right side here, waiting for the test to start. So this flow has been created now, and we are provisioning and deploying this flow now. So we see it will be ready for the next 10 minutes, means we can test it out now. So Marcel, if you go to APIForce demo sheet and enter something, Lugenbühl.
Or Kahn.
Why not? Go for Kahn. Oliver Kahn is now entered as a lead. So let's wait what happens. I didn't hear anything, so it can take time. We can go maybe back to Composer.
It's still processing.
It's still processing. And now the flow has been executed, means let's check if something appears in Slack, Marcel. So on the, yeah. You can see new lead comes in from Salesforce, Kahn. Came in, Marcel, well done.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah. And let's go to the next one in Salesforce. Do we see it? So you go into Salesforce and now refresh it from here. So here or like this.
Or like this.
And you see also the thing came in. So Marcel, you are now an integration expert.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's good. Merci,
well done.
Thank you for the surprise.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so that was.
Remember that.
Oh, I think I need to work with someone else now. There's the presentation. So let's open up for questions for now. I know it was a simple and straight away demo, but it showed the capability that it's easy to use, it's simple to configure, and also if you are using already any point platform, you can govern Composer even with the AnyPoint platform by providing the APIs which need to be consumed and enable the business to drive tasks which are on daily basis and need to be executed repeatedly, and just drive the automation towards hyper activities. Any questions from you guys? Okay, let's go with Valdemar. I know you are going to grill me.
Yeah, great demo, thanks for that. So I noticed there is a lot of different accounting tools up there. So Xero, QuickBooks, I think Stripe was also there.
Yes.
So is that one of the key use cases for syncing invoices maybe or accounting details?
exactly these are the use cases we plan for Composer, especially on the business side. You know, if you get invoices in a specific system and you want to synchronize those into Salesforce or any other system, then you can simply use Composer. And you don't need always to go through IT. Maybe you have a small company and you want to just drive these things and later on govern into more strategic approach, then you can get started with Composer and integrate later on any point platform. Okay. Trying to log in. Andy, you are not allowed to participate here. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's go. Oh, we have so many people already. Actually 26. So shall we get started? How to start it? Just press enter. The first question, so the faster you respond, the higher number you will get. Build integration easily with code, not clicks. With clicks, not code. With clicks and code. So what is the slogan of Composer? Which one is valid? With code, not clicks. With clicks, not code. Or with clicks and code. So with clicks, not code. This is correct. So let's see who's leading the game. Oh, so it's AF and Mark Petzold. Where's Mark? Who's AF? Okay, AF and Imeric. Imeric is there, okay. Let's see if they can hold the position. Matthias, Timon and Charmin are right behind you. So let's go to the second question. I have to press enter again. So who is primarily empowered by MuleSoft Composer? Is it the MuleSoft developer, the business teams, or the front-end developers? This should be right from everyone, otherwise I did a bad job. We don't have a sales team, that's right. Yes, so it's the business teams who are empowered here by Composer. So let's go to the last question. Can see who's leading now. Matthias, I think. That's close. Okay, so Imeric is taking over from Mark and AF still leading. Last question. What was the last question? How many connectors are currently supported by Composer? I told you, it's 16, 18, or 20. Wow, that was it. Oh, wow, okay, total 18 is correct. And let's see, who won? We have a clear winner. Yes. Let's see. Okay, so AF, you won. Imeric and Chamin, congratulations as well. So you can get your gift here. AF. Let's go for the other one. Okay, so where's Mark? Is here. It is. Who was the? I forgot it. Sorry. Chamin and Imeric. So Chamin. Okay. And Imeric, congratulations. Okay, that was it. Thanks a lot. And let's go to the next topic for us. Close this one. Andy, we are still streaming, right? Okay. Okay, Fiona, the stage is yours. Thank you.
We're almost done with the day. I'm going to have the last session on integration and sustainability. If you know me, then you know I love sustainability. If you don't know me, then you know it now. So this is really what I'm trying to drive within MuleSoft, trying to figure out what it means for our customers, for our partners. What do we have to do to be a sustainable organization? And we're going to start off with a quiz. I think it's the same code. If you're still logged in, is that right?
It's
No.
not the same code.
Can you help me steer this? Because
Yes.
I don't know how it works.
I hope it's not the same code. It was late yesterday.
None of these questions are technical, so I don't know if anyone will have an advantage over anyone else.
Everyone in? Still?
Not yet.
I was wondering how the QR code is appearing back there. So let's go in. You have 2 more, 3. So let's wait.
Maybe my topic's more interesting.
I guess so. Okay, so let's press enter to count down.
Same format. First question, what were Switzerland's annual CO2 emissions in 2020? That's the latest data I could find. In metric tons. Dun 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 dun. Almost there. Not bad. Does anyone know if that's a lot or not a lot in terms of tons of emissions?
51 billion total in the world.
Whoa. All right. It was 0.09% of the world's emissions is Switzerland. So I didn't do the math, but I read it somewhere.
How much?
0.09%. So we have a lot to say. All right, not bad. We have different people at the top now. That's great to see. Next question. What is the acceptable temperature increase before the impact is irreversible? In degrees Celsius.
I would lose here, believe me. Wow.
Very good. Well done. 1.5 degrees. The next question will be related. But first, let's see how the leaderboard is doing. Do you guys get to choose the icon that you have? Okay. All right, next question. What is the estimated time? We'll see. Click yeah. This was as of yesterday. What's the estimated time we have left until we reach 1.5 if we don't change the way we live in years and days? Ooh.
Ooh.
I was trying to be dramatic, but it's actually 7 years and 127. We've got so much time. All right, before we do the last question, don't click yet. There's something I need to explain first, or just check. Ooh, very okay. It's gonna change our top level. Yeah.
Wow.
Shimeen's gonna get more chocolate. All right, the last question has to do with Earth Overshoot Day. Does everyone know what that is? All right, it's a measurement that is done to check how within the year, when will we reach the amount of resources that we're entitled for the year. And it's broken down by countries, and the question is country specific. So essentially, globally, if we continue living the way that we live today, we need something like 2.7 Earths to feed all of the consumption that we've got. The next question is, which countries have just had this Earth Overshoot Day last weekend on Sunday? Starting from the 1st of January, right? So we're not even 3 months in.
What happens here? Loading result, why?
Loading results. Did we not put in the last question?
I did it, I promise you.
We have failed to load the trailer.
What do you have?
Failed to load the trailer.
Here it comes.
Now it comes.
Which 3 countries were it on March 13th? Canada, UAE, USA, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Spain, Portugal, Italy. Well done, for those of you who got that one right. For an extra bonus point, does anyone know when Switzerland's overshoot day is? 1st of August. You know it, Florian? Too risky. It's May 13th.
So, Chamin,
Hey,
you won.
Chamin, look at you. Are you allowed to accept this many gifts? Do you have to check with your compliance first?
You have to select, I don't know.
Ah, yes. So
It's a different one, so you can
It's a
be
different
happy.
prize. We went shopping for prizes, and I said the Lindor balls are not sustainable enough for a sustainability presentation, so it's Bio chocolate from Co-op is the new prize. All right, first place gets the colourful ones. Congratulations.
So who was PB? PB? PB is back there.
Very long way to walk. Come in.
And then you have Imeric. On the fly you can pass it to Imeric.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Hope you all like chocolate. Alright, so the serious stuff. How are we going to save the planet?
Shall I click or?
Yes.
1 second. Da was los.
Alright, I found this yesterday and I thought it was quite fitting, and I will actually just read it line for line. I found it from BCG. So the 20th century technology, specifically mechanization and other industrial processes, got us into this climate change conundrum. So can 21st century data and digital technology help us get out of it?
Yes.
Great answer. Does anyone have any initial thoughts of where I'm going with this? Any ideas or any sort of views of what you're already doing in this space, in what you do with your day job? All right, let's change that. I'm going to share my point of view. It's not really, I'm currently validating, so we're going to go through and you're going to help me figure this out as I go through. But essentially, we've just been through it, the time to act is now. Sustainability is also the #1 risk to business growth. So everything we talk about in terms of customer acquisition is actually a risk to that growth. And we all know that technology is a catalyst for anything that you really want to do with the business, and same for sustainability. Typically, why businesses want to be sustainable is grouped into these 4 buckets, but essentially it's great for marketing. You want to be a leader, you want to be showing that you're doing the right things. Customer experience, especially if you're working in a retail or a CPG industry, your customers and your consumers are starting to demand more sustainable products and more sustainable engagement. You want to reduce cost. Reducing cost, optimizing efficiency will also lead you to a more sustainable operation. And then, of course, there's all these regulations that are starting to come in. They're increasing, and there's a new focus on what every organization needs to be doing for their sustainable footprint. What does that mean for IT? Very, very broadly speaking, so we just said technology is a catalyst for impact, but let's be honest, today an IT strategy does not include anything around sustainability. If you know your IT strategy and you know that it does include it, raise your hand. All right, good, validated. We heard it before from Interdiscount that the budgets and the capacity are staying somewhat stagnant. How do you address any new challenges that are coming in, new technologies, and also sustainability pressures? And then if we focus on the data, so ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and governance. I focus quite a lot on the environmental side, but there are also a lot of key components on the social side as well, so ethical interactions with humans and supply chains. How are we making that data accessible internally and externally so that we can work with partners? Is this sort of out of the blue, or does this sort of make sense of what IT might need to start getting involved in? Very good. Let's move on. going to try and focus on integration, because that's why we're all here today and we talk about APIs a lot. Some of you will know this mess in your IT landscape, and that is going to be the blocker that is stopping you and your organization from actually achieving sustainability goals. Some of the goals that we've seen come up quite as broad buckets are things like operational efficiency, which I mentioned can have cost impacts or cost reduction impacts, supply chain efficiency and transparency. How are you understanding what your suppliers are doing and how your materials are put together? Circular economy, very tough nut to crack. One view of what your emissions are as an organization, and are you able to break that down into different divisions or countries or areas and really understand what's happening? Use sustainable business models, and finally the full reporting across all different categories of sustainability. And so all of this is going to be a blocker unless you resolve it with the magical tools that we call Anypoint Platform. So if you click to the next slide, everything that you're doing, if you're using API-led as an architecture principle, will help you react with speed to these kinds of pressures for sustainability. So everything you're doing today will also help you in preparing for your sustainability goals as well. I'm going to ask you again, am I really talking crazy, or is this actually something that makes sense? Thumbs up, I like it. All right, now it's over to you guys. I did a little bit of research based on some of the registrations. Guaranteed every single one of your organizations has a sustainability strategy. So I did a look at what was online. I wanted to go through that, and then I wanted to, together with you, brainstorm what more we could be doing, what is integration, what are the use cases, all of these things with the remaining time that we have today. So if we click through, don't be offended if you're not on here. If you are on here, it's a compliment. Yeah, so one at a time. So Expo, if you know, I don't know if Expo showed up today. Fantastic. Do you know your sustainability strategy?
Sometimes
It's nice to meet you. So one thing that I picked out from it was smart energy products, and this is actually one of your subsidiaries, CKW, that's working on that. And actually, fun fact, they are talking about integration for smart metering as well. So that's one example. Next one is Swiss Re. Is anyone from Swiss Re here?
But online, I guess.
Online. Great to have you here. Completely different industry, completely different sustainability challenges. Swiss Re is looking at how do they ensure for protection against adverse weather events. So here, maybe another consideration around integration. How are you tracking the weather? How are you able to better predict when these happen? How are you better able to then calculate how you need to cover that from an insurance perspective? That's an example. Next one. Into discount. You presented about your partners, your distributors, due diligence and transparency in supply chain. So where are the materials coming from? We've had discussions around the energy labels. So how are you providing that information to your consumers? You don't have to answer it. It's okay. Next one. World Economic Forum. We all know that they're really great at events. They're also really good at publishing a lot of materials around the environment and things, new innovations that are coming out. So ideas around sustainable events. If there's anything that you can see around integration in there, that's where I'm getting at. We're gonna finish the slide first. Tamedia, TX Group, I heard you're here. Yeah, there you are. Great. What I found about you guys, a lot of stuff around the recycling process of waste, any residual stuff from the printing materials. I'm sure there's some stuff around, how are you tracking that material? How are you finding ways to repurpose it? Essentially anything that has a process will have data, anything that has data, integration. What next? Totally nuts, I heard you're here too. Yes? There you are. Alright, I knew this one way back, but I'm sure everyone knows that Victorinox makes army knives out of recycled Nespresso capsules. Everyone's heard that one? Yeah? No? Ah, that's a really cool one, right? So all of you, if you ever feel guilty about having Nespresso capsules, then just send them straight to the back here, and he'll make an army knife for you. I'm sure there's some way you need to collaborate with Nespresso to share information. Where are you getting the materials from? How are you collaborating? So there's definitely an integration aspect in that. How are you making that partnership easier? We've got 2 more to go. La Prairie. Anyone from La Prairie here? No? So if you don't know La Prairie, it's a luxury skincare brand. They are owned by Beiersdorf, and Beiersdorf is actually very famous for this process called life cycle analysis, which really does cradle to grave, or sometimes cradle to cradle analysis of the full emissions of a product. There's a famous video that they've got on YouTube around, trying to decide whether the plastic packaging was better than the glass packaging. It turned out, in total, in the measurement, the plastic one was more environmentally friendly, which we wouldn't immediately assume. And the last one, a whole different industry again, Sika, building materials. I don't think anyone from Sika is here today. No. They've just published something around circular concrete. I'm not an expert in concrete, but I'm sure there's something in there around the process of taking the rubble and the concrete from different building sites and finding a way to reuse it. All of this is publicly available. I haven't sort of put any private insight in there. All I did was Google the company name and the sustainability strategy. And now what I want to do is work together, hear from you where you see use cases and ideas for integration, not just in these. You're also feel free to Google your sustainability strategy quickly on your phone. Any ideas you've got, I'm going to write them down. Over to you. I will stand here in silence if nobody says anything. Yeah.
So you're working since last week on another platform that's called Apero, where people submit ideas for projects. There are very, it's a worldwide projects, and many of them are sustainability. And since last week we started working on integration to form committees that would vote on those projects and pick them up. So we're creating, because we need a voting system to a different platform, we're already integrating the proposals into the voting platform with So that's what we're going to
That's a great one. So for anyone who doesn't know Uplink, or Florin, so Florin works for the World Economic Forum, who I put on the slide. And Uplink is a partnership with World Economic Forum, Deloitte, and Salesforce to connect small business ideas for sustainability and environment to investors. Did I get that right?
Yes. Wow.
Yes.
You got a bit of a neat
All right, I like it. Has that started any juices flowing for anyone else? Yes.
Sorry for the shameless plug, but there's some studies that something like 30% of all the cloud resources are kind of just idle and wasted, so they're not being used. So then there's a huge opportunity. It's not something that it's just a huge opportunity to kind of strip down the unused infrastructure resources and maybe shut them off and then develop locally or something like that.
Like with LocalStack.
Like with LocalStack. This is it.
Yep.
But it's really like, I think like 30% like this estimates from Gartner.
That's impressive.
So let's use the mic for the next one.
Can you run around?
Just run around.
Any more ideas? From the companies up here, or from any other companies? Or just your own personal ideas? I can tell you what I'm going to do with it. Nothing. I'm gathering ideas and sort of trying to validate that what we're talking about is not really fully crazy. Actually,
Does MuleSoft has any ideas? How can I, for instance, use any point to be more sustainable?
We do. They're not my ideas because I'm not technical enough, but we do have a blog around sustainable development practices. A couple of tips in there around how you deploy applications, how you develop applications, where you deploy them, things like if you're still using Mule 3, that's a little bit less environmentally friendly than Mule 4. And we can send you the link, or you can Google it. Like I said, I listen.
Anyone?
So
So I'm from Roche, and I think there are a couple of use cases that we are already integrating, basically using MuleSoft for that. One of those is site services that we provide. So I think better use of our resources across our site, and then collaboration to bring down, let's say, the resource utilization. That's one. The other part is around the manufacturing and the supply chain that we have. So we do have some use cases around that as well, where we are trying to ease that supply chain, thus saving, let's say, resources and working towards this.
Supply chain's a tough one. So if you're really cracking that nut, that's
yeah. I mean, I think there are some use cases that are being worked upon. I don't know how much exactly the stats around it, but I know for sure that there are some use cases around it.
Yeah. There's I'm also going to shameless plug. There's an event coming up, a supply chain summit, also hosted by MuleSoft, and I'm currently in the process of defining what supply chain transparency and integration and sustainability do together. But that's coming. Does any of the salespeople know when that event is? 7th of April. Thank you. Look out for that one.
I have more question. It's more of a question, but does MuleSoft have any sort of like open data initiatives where maybe data scientists can collect public data or something based on and then make some analysis in the supply chain area or maybe even for transportation or so on? Is there anything going on in terms of open data?
They're shaking their heads then.
Okay.
I guess
Okay. Might have been opportunity also. Might be a privacy issue.
Everyone just wants to get to that level.
One more, otherwise she will not move from here.
I can sustain.
Shall we take our salespeople?
Do you think they're going to listen?
Thank you.
One more. Maybe Victorinox. I know you don't use MuleSoft yet, but sorry to call you out, that was really unfair of me. And yet here we are. No ideas. Alright. Well, if you ever do come up with ideas, I will wrap it up because I can tell everyone wants to get to the Apero. I like these. I think we can make a much bigger list as well, and there's so many things that I think we can achieve as integrators in our day job. I really want to make sure that everybody, not just sustainability strategy people who do this every day, that everybody is doing something in your day-to-day work to make the planet a better place. So, as a call to action, when you leave here, think about it. Don't forget. Don't drink so much that you forget. Think about it, have a discussion internally, see if there's any ideas that you can come up with. I'm also very happy to do sort of brainstorming sessions. I've done this a couple of times with some other customers specifically. I think there's a real big opportunity here to make what we do even more valuable.
Awesome.
Thank you. I'm going to stay up here because it's on me to wrap up. Yeah. We want to say thank you to every single one of you who came here in person today, everyone who's dialed in, and actually, I don't know if anyone's made it all the way through these 3 or 4 hours virtually as well. We're really happy to be able to do these things in person again and to actually see some actual humans. I also want to specifically thank our speakers and our guests today. So much appreciated for all the work that went into preparing that, presenting it, and I hope it was also valuable for you. And I think finally a thank you from us as the organizing team.
Yeah.
For some technical issues, but I think we stumbled our way through it, and we'll take the allowance of the first in-person event to learn how to fix those technical issues. When is the next event?
It's work in progress. I think so we are planning to do this kind of format every 3 months. So hopefully we can roll something out end of June and then continue every 3 months. And we are also trying to have regular online meetings. Where maybe if you have topics or if you want to present, feel free to come to one of us and we will organize accordingly.
One other question I got during the break. Will we have events in Geneva Yeah. I know a few people are here from Geneva, so raise your hand if you're interested in doing an event in Geneva. And you organize it? Yeah. Speak to Maxim.
Awesome. So do we have any other slide? Yes.
Oh, what a nice ending. So sorry if you're virtual, but open your beer at home. And so we're going to do that in person here. I think right outside. Yeah.
Yeah. So please join us, and if you still want any minis, we have enough. No?
Last word on behalf of the whole MuleSoft team Switzerland. I would like to thank you, the organization committee, for organizing it. No, so Amir, Fiona, Michael, Andreas, thank you very much for organizing this event. I know it's a lot of work. It's normally the event passes very quickly, but the preparation work, the invitations, the whole program, all the speakers, coordinating all that, bringing the program together, bringing the people together, that's a lot of work, and I would like to thank you very, very much in the name of the whole MuleSoft team Switzerland. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Amir, merci beaucoup.
Danke. Ich muss ganz kurz den Livestream abstellen.
Ja.
Moment.